In a quiet village in the heart of La Mancha, there lived a man whose days were consumed by the words of knights and heroes. Alonso Quijano, a man of modest means, had spent countless hours poring over. But the more he read, the less satisfied he became with the humdrum life around him. The fields of La Mancha, though vast and golden, were devoid of dragons to slay or maidens to rescue. His neighbors, and if there were no adventures, he would create them. His transformation began with a suit of armor, pieced together from rusted relics and a cooking pot that he fashioned into a helmet. Standing Beth. He chose a local farm girl, Aldonza Lorenzo, who had no knowledge of his existence. In his mind, she became Dulcinea del Toboso, a beacon of purity and grace. Her imagined beauty and virtue would fuel. With a lance in hand and Rocinante beneath him, he rode out at dawn, his heart swelling with dreams of heroism. The road stretched before him, winding through fields and hills that seemed to shimmer doubly. As Don Quixote ventured further from his village, the landscape unfolded into a realm ripe with possibility. To his eyes, every hill concealed a castle, every shadow hid an enemy to vanquish. His here. The building was weathered and unremarkable, its plaster walls cracked from years of sun and wind. Yet, in the eyes of Don Quixote, it transformed into a grand fortress, its banners fluttering in an eye. Bowing deeply, he addressed them in the most gallant tone he could muster. "My noble ladies," he declared, "I beseech you to grant shelter to a weary knight-errant who seeks respite from his arduous tea." Don Quixote, mistaking him for the lord of the castle, addressed him with reverence. "My lord," he said, "I humbly request that you bestow upon me the honor of knighthood, so I may fulfill my destiny." "You honor me, my lord. I shall not falter." As night fell, Don Quixote stood guard over his makeshift armor, which he had carefully arranged atop a trough. The stars above seemed to whisper in courage. The startled muleteer stumbled back, and a scuffle ensued, drawing the innkeeper and other guests to the scene. The commotion ended with Don Quixote sprawled on the ground, his armor scattered. Yet with tears of gratitude, Don Quixote mounted Rocinante and rode away, his heart swelling with pride. His first adventure, though humble, had solidified his resolve. The world awaited, and he would me. Yet he knew that no knight-errant could succeed without a loyal squire by his side. It was not long before he returned to his village, where he sought out Sancho Panza, a simple farmer known for his. "If you're serious about this," he said, scratching his head, "I'll go with you. But you'd better keep your promise, Sir Knight." "By my honor as a knight-errant," Don Quixote replied solemnly, "you say." "Behold, Sancho," he cried, pointing with his lance, "giants, monstrous giants threatening this land. It is my duty to vanquish them." Sancho squinted at the horizon, puzzled. "Giants? Those are just—" The blades, driven by the wind, spun relentlessly. As he struck, the great wooden arm caught his lance, shattering it and flinging him to the ground with a force that left him dazed. Sancho hurried, too. But fear not, Sancho, for justice will prevail. Despite his injuries, Don Quixote refused to abandon their quest. As they continued their journey, Sancho began to understand the peculiar nature of High. That night, as they camped beneath the stars, Sancho asked, "Why do you do this, sir? Why chase after giants and enchantments?" Don Quixote gazed into the fire, his eyes reflecting its flickering light. The journey continued, and though Sancho braced himself for more misadventures, he could not deny a growing sense of curiosity. What other marvels awaited them on the road ahead? The following morning, Sancho, though wary of his master's illusions, remained loyal, if only for the faint hope of his promised governorship. By midday, they encountered a group of travelers on horseback. Among them were M. "Before you may pass, you must confess that there is no maiden in all the world as fair as the peerless Dulcinea del Toboso." The merchants, startled at first, soon began to chuckle among themselves. "Confess it now, or prepare to face my wrath." Sancho shifted uneasily on his donkey. "Master," he whispered, "maybe let this one go. They don't mean any harm." But Don Quixote was resolute. "Honored Dem, you must say it with sincerity or face me in combat." At this, another traveler, a young man, who fancied himself clever, spurred his horse forward. "Let us see this mighty knight in action," he said. "Are you hurt, sir?" Don Quixote groaned, his pride wounded more than his body. "It is not I who am defeated," he muttered, "but justice itself. These scoundrels are protected by dark enchantments. Tea. A brief respite, Sancho, but we must not tarry long. The road is fraught with injustice, and it is my duty to set it right." Sancho sighed, but couldn't help but admire the resilience of his masters. The air grew cooler, and the sound of rustling leaves and distant bird calls filled the evening. Sancho, ever practical, suggested they find a safe place to camp for the night, but Don Quixote had oath. "Master, perhaps these brigands or knights can wait until morning. A warm fire and some food would do us both good." But Don Quixote was already guiding Rocinante toward the shadowy woods. Reluctantly. Suddenly a flicker of light appeared in the distance, a faint golden glow that danced among the trees. "Do you see that, Sancho?" Don Quixote whispered, his eyes alight with excitement. "It must be a—" The two crept closer, their steps muffled by the forest floor. As they neared the light, they discovered a group of shepherds sitting around a fire, laughing and singing as they roasted meat on skew. "Cease your wicked rites and surrender to the justice of Don Quixote de la Mancha." The shepherds froze, startled by the sudden intrusion. One, a burly man with a thick beard, stood and raised his horn. In his enthusiasm he tripped over a tree root and tumbled headlong into the fire, scattering embers and sending the shepherds into a frenzy of shouting and laughter. Sancho rushed to pull his master. "Another victory for justice," he declared, as if the entire ordeal had gone exactly as planned. The shepherds, now more amused than angry, offered the pair some food before sending them on their way. "Not everything is as it seems?" Don Quixote smiled, his eyes fixed on the stars above. "Ah, Sancho, it is the duty of a knight-errant to see the world not as it is, but as it should be. And so long as—" The forest gave way to open fields, and the pair pressed on into the night, their bond strengthened by the trials they shared and the adventures yet to come. Dawn broke over the horizon, bathing the L. Don Quixote's heart quickened at the sight. "A damsel in distress, no doubt," he said, spurring Rocinante forward. "Prepare yourself, Sancho, for chivalry demands our swift action." Sancho squinted. Fear not, gentlefolk. I, Don Quixote de la Mancha, am here to deliver you from peril." The travelers, a troupe of actors in colorful costumes, turned to face the knight. Their leader, a stout man-wit. To him it was clear they were no mere actors, but enchanted figures trapped by some malevolent spell. Your plight is evident, he said solemnly. You are victims of dark sorcery, and I shall not rest. Your master has quite the imagination, one of the actors remarked to Sancho. You've no idea, Sancho replied with a sigh. As Don Quixote brandished his sword at an invisible foe, declaring victory, he handed Don Quixote a gilded prop sword from their collection. Don Quixote accepted it with reverence, believing it to be a magical weapon imbued with great power. May this blade serve justice in. Simpler than you think? Sancho, Don Quixote replied, his tone grave, the world is full of unseen forces, both noble and wicked. It takes a true knight-errant to see beyond the ordinary and act. For Sancho, it was a test of patience, loyalty, and an ever-growing appetite for adventure. They pressed onward, the morning sun shining brightly above, its light a promise of the trials and triumphs. Merchants hawked their wares, children chased each other through the streets, and townsfolk gathered around a platform where a man in a wide-brimmed hat performed sleight-of-hand tricks to delight a Sancho, distracted by the smell of roasted meats from a nearby stall, nodded absent-mindedly. Of course, master. But perhaps we could start with a meal? Before Don Quixote could respond, a commotio. Please, good people, she cried, my son has been taken by the Baron's men. They say he's to be punished for a crime he didn't commit. The crowd murmured in sympathy, but no one stepped forward to H. You, Sir Knight, will you help us? My boy is innocent, but the Baron is a cruel man. No one dares defy him. Don Quixote puffed out his chest. Fear not, madam. I, Don Quixote de la Mancha, shall see. The Baron's manor loomed large, its iron gates guarded by 2 menacing sentries. Don Quixote approached boldly. Open these gates, villains, and release the innocent boy at once, or prepare to face my... Rocinante, startled by the sudden movement, stumbled to a halt, nearly unseating his rider. The guards burst into laughter, their derision stoking Don Quixote's fury. Sancho hurried forward, his hands. What's all this commotion? A tall, stern-looking man emerged, his fine clothes and air of authority marking him as the Baron. He surveyed the scene with disdain. Don Quixote pointed his sword dramate. If you can best my champion in a duel, I shall release the boy. From the shadows emerged a towering figure clad in armor, wielding a massive sword. Don Quixote's eyes lit with determination, while, the duel was fierce at least in Don Quixote's mind. In reality, his wild swings and clumsy footwork were no match for the Baron's champion. Yet, as he fell to the ground, winded and defeated, the crow, as they made their way back to the village, Sancho helped Don Quixote onto Rocinante. Another victory, Sancho, Don Quixote declared weakly, his body aching but his spirit undimmed. Sancho shook his. Together they shared a modest feast, the night alive with laughter and song, as the next chapter of their adventure waited just beyond the horizon. The morning after the village's celebrations, Don Q. Sancho, he began, his tone contemplative. The world is vast, and its wrongs are many. A true knight-errant must never rest. Sancho yawned, his eyelids heavy from the previous night's festivities. Good sir, Don Quixote called out, what troubles you so? The shepherd ran to meet them, his face etched with worry. Strangers, you must help. That cursed windmill has been terrorizing my flock. See? Sancho, do you not see? This is no mere windmill, but a giant in disguise. Its malevolent magic has brought ruin to this poor man's livelihood. Justice demands its destruction." Sanko groaned. "Masked. Is he serious?" "More serious than you'll ever know," Sanko replied, trudging after his master. As Don Quixote charged, the windmill's blades turned with the wind, their slow, rhythmic movement apt. "The giant, it is strong, but I shall not yield." Sanko sighed. "Perhaps the giant has learned its lesson, and we can leave it be?" The shepherd, though confused, thanked them profusely, offering tea. Sanko nodded, though his gaze lingered on the windmill, still turning peacefully in the distance. The sun climbed higher, casting their shadows long upon the road. Their journey continued, the hoary. The heat of the midday sun bore down on Don Quixote and Sanko as they traversed a dusty trail winding through a forest. The chirping of birds and rustling leaves offered a soothing symphony, but Don, and perhaps my stomach growling. Before Don Quixote could reply, a faint cry echoed through the trees. Both men froze, their eyes scanning the foliage. The cry came again, this time louder, a voice ca. Around her stood 3 rough-looking men, their laughter coarse and mocking. "Release her at once, you scoundrels!" Don Quixote bellowed, drawing his sword. The men turned, startled by the knight's sue. "I am Don Quixote de la Mancha, protector of the innocent and scourge of villains like you." Sanko, hanging back nervously, whispered, "Master, perhaps we should consider a less confrontational ape." Don Quixote dismounted and approached her, cutting her bonds with a flourish. "Fear not, fair lady, you are safe now." The woman, though grateful, looked at him with a mixture of awe and confusion. "Tea. It's not far, but I fear the bandits may return." Don Quixote nodded solemnly. "Then we shall escort you. No harm shall befall you while I, Don Quixote, stand guard." As they walked, Clara shared her. The villagers hailed Don Quixote as a hero, offering him and Sanko a feast in their honor. As the evening wore on, Sanko sat by the fire, his plate piled high with food. "Master," he said between bite, "and that, my friend, is a victory greater than any battle." The villagers sang songs of their hero long into the night, their voices carrying through the valley. And as the fire burned low, Don Quixote, Clara and the villagers gathered to bid them farewell, their gratitude evident in their smiles and words of thanks. "Sir Knight," Clara said, her voice steady, "your courage has brought hope to my peal. Do you think chivalry ever includes breakfast?" The two resumed their journey, the road ahead winding through rolling hills and fields. Don Quixote rode with his head high, his eyes scanning the horrors. One path led toward a distant mountain range, its peaks shrouded in mist. The other descended into a dense forest, dark and foreboding. "Sanko," Don Quixote declared, "the choice before us is clear. Couldn't we find a nice village with an inn instead?" Don Quixote laughed. "Ah, Sanko, ever the practical one. But fortune favors the bold. To the forest we go." They entered the woods, the canopy A.B. Such places often hide great evils and even greater glory. Suddenly, a rustling in the underbrush made them halt. From the shadows emerged a group of men dressed in ragged cloaks, their faces obscure. "Villains! Know that you face Don Quixote de la Mancha, champion of justice. Surrender now, and your lives may yet be spared." The bandits laughed, but their leader stepped forward, his eyes narrowing. The fight was chaotic, with Don Quixote battling valiantly against the odds. His skill and determination turned the tide, and the bandits, realizing they were outmatched, fled into the woods. Sancho. Sancho, this is the life of a knight-errant danger at every turn, but also the chance to make the world a better place. They continued through the forest, their bond strengthened by the trials they. Don Quixote and Sancho emerged onto a wide plain dotted with small farms and distant cottages. In the center of the plain stood a crumbling castle, its stone walls covered in ivy and its towers leaning. "It looks more like a ruin, master, probably full of rats and spiders." "Exactly," Don Quixote exclaimed. "Rats, spiders, or something far more sinister. Come, let us investigate." They approached there. "This place doesn't feel right." Don Quixote dismounted, his steps confident. "A knight never turns back from the unknown, Sancho. Only by facing our fears do we uncover the truth." They wandered through. "Stay close, Sancho, we are not alone." The whispers grew louder as they followed a winding staircase down into the depths of the castle. At the bottom they found a large chamber lit by flickering two. "This is our chance to stop them and bring light to this place of shadow." Before Sancho could protest, Don Quixote strode into the chamber, his voice ringing out. "Cease your wickedness, evildoers." T. Don Quixote drew his sword and charged, engaging the nearest figure in a fierce duel. Sancho, though terrified, picked up a fallen torch and waved it wildly, driving back one of the attackers. The bat. "Sancho, the world is full of darkness, but as long as we stand, the light shall never fade." As they left the castle, the sun was setting, casting the plain in hues of orange and gold. Don Quixote lo. Each challenge they faced brought them closer, not only as knight and squire, but as friends bound by their shared quest for truth, justice, and the ideals of chivalry. The road stretched long into the sea. An elderly man approached, his face lined with years of toil. "Travelers, what brings you to our humble home?" Don Quixote dismounted, bowing gallantly. "Good sir, I am Don Quixote de la Mancha, nigh. Our village has been plagued by a strange and terrible beast that roams the nearby hills. It comes at night, stealing livestock and spreading fear." Don Quixote's eyes lit up. "A beast, you say?" "Fear." That night he and Sancho waited on the outskirts of the village, the hills looming dark and ominous. The villagers had described the beast as large and shadowy, with glowing eyes and an unearthly howl. "Tonight we prove our mettle." The beast emerged from the shadows, its form monstrous and unnatural. It had the body of a wolf, but its size was enormous, and its glowing eyes pierced the darkness. Essay. Finally, with a mighty thrust, Don Quixote struck the beast, and it let out a final mournful cry before collapsing. The villagers rushed out, their faces a mix of relief and awe. They thanked Diun Cui. Don Quixote smiled, his gaze fixed on the stars. "Sancho, the world is vast and full of challenges, but with faith and courage, even the greatest of beasts can be overcome." The next morning they ale. Their journey continued, a testament to the enduring power of dreams, honor, and the unyielding bond between two unlikely companions.